Under the scorching midday sun, the firing range buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the sharp cracks of rifles echoing off the distant hills. Dust swirled around the boots of the gathered soldiers, their laughter loud and unrestrained as they stood in a loose semicircle near the benches stacked with gear. At the far end of the range, gleaming in the heat haze, were the distant targets, a row of steel silhouettes set hundreds of meters away. Private Claire Donovan stood a few feet behind the group, her hands gripping her sniper rifle with a calm firmness that contrasted sharply with the mockery directed her way. She was tall and athletic, her dark hair tied back tightly beneath her cap, her uniform perfectly pressed, and her expression unreadable. For weeks she had endured their jokes and dismissive comments, brushing them off silently, but today was different. Today, a high-ranking general had come to observe the company's marksmanship, and the stakes had never been higher. "Come on, Donovan," one of the men jeered, a burly sergeant named Harris who had been her most persistent critic. "You're not seriously thinking you can outshoot us, are you? Sniping isn't a game for girls." His words drew a chorus of laughter from the others, a sound Claire had come to know all too well. Another soldier, Martinez, shook his head and added, "Maybe she'll hit the dirt instead of the target. Careful out there, sweetheart, wouldn't want you to hurt yourself." Claire's jaw tightened, but she said nothing, only adjusted the strap on her rifle and stepped forward, her boots crunching in the gravel. In the distance, a black SUV rolled to a stop, and the air seemed to shift as the general himself stepped out, flanked by two officers. The men immediately straightened, their laughter dying away as they saluted. General Rourke was a towering figure with silver hair and a reputation for being ruthlessly demanding. His sharp eyes scanned the group, lingering briefly on Claire before moving to the line of targets. "Today," he announced, his voice carrying easily over the range, "we will see who among you truly has the skill and discipline to be called a marksman. Accuracy under pressure is what separates a sniper from an ordinary shooter. You will each take a shot at the final target. A clean hit through the center is the only acceptable result." As he spoke, Claire felt the weight of every gaze on her, some skeptical, others openly hostile. She knew what they were thinking. She had heard their whispers since the day she joined the unit, the constant insinuation that she didn't belong. In their eyes, she was an intruder, a woman trying to prove herself in a man's world. But Claire hadn't come this far by accident. Her father had been a sniper, a decorated veteran whose stories of patience and precision had filled her childhood. After his death, she had vowed to carry on his legacy, training relentlessly until her body and mind were honed to perfection. Today wasn't just about silencing her critics, it was about honoring him. Harris stepped up first, his broad shoulders squared with confidence. He took his time lining up the shot, then squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, and a distant clang signaled a solid hit, though slightly off-center. The men clapped and cheered, Harris grinning smugly as he turned to the general. "Not perfect, sir, but pretty damn close." One by one, the others followed, each hitting the target with varying degrees of success. Some were steady, others less so, but none managed a perfect center shot. Finally, it was Claire's turn. She stepped forward, the crowd falling into a tense silence. The heat seemed to press down on her as she lowered herself into a prone position, the cool metal of the rifle familiar against her cheek. She slowed her breathing, shutting out everything, the wind, the murmurs, even the pounding of her own heart. Through the scope, the world narrowed to a single point, the distant target shimmering in the sun. Behind her, Harris couldn't resist one last jab. "Don't embarrass yourself, Donovan. You don't have the guts for this." She didn't respond. Her father's voice echoed in her mind instead, calm and steady, "Patience, Claire. The bullet is already there, you just have to guide it home." She adjusted for wind, calculated the distance, and exhaled slowly. The world seemed to pause as she squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared, and for a heartbeat, there was nothing but silence. Then a sharp, unmistakable sound rang out as the bullet struck dead center, splitting the target cleanly in two. The crowd gasped. Even General Rourke's stern expression flickered with surprise. Claire rose smoothly to her feet, lowering her rifle with practiced ease. Harris's mouth hung open, his earlier smugness replaced by shock and disbelief. "No way," Martinez muttered, stepping closer as if he couldn't trust his own eyes. That's impossible." General Rourke strode forward, his boots crunching in the gravel. He examined the shattered target, then turned to Claire with an expression that was both assessing and approving. "Private Donovan," he said slowly, his voice carrying a new weight, "that was a flawless shot. In all my years, I've rarely seen such precision." He faced the rest of the unit, his gaze like a blade cutting through their stunned faces. Let this be a lesson to every one of you. Skill knows no gender, no rank, no prejudice. It is earned through discipline and determination. Today, Private Donovan has shown what true mastery looks like. The men shifted uncomfortably, their earlier mockery now a bitter taste in their mouths. Harris looked as though he wanted to sink into the earth, his face red with humiliation. Claire met his gaze briefly, her own expression calm but unyielding. She didn't need to gloat, the result spoke for itself. As the general gave further instructions, Claire allowed herself a small, private smile. She had done it. She had silenced their laughter not with words but with action. Yet beneath the satisfaction, there was a deeper, quieter resolve. This was only the beginning. She would face greater challenges ahead, harsher tests of skill and courage. But she would face them all, just as she had today, with unshakable focus and the memory of her father's voice guiding her. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the range, the unit dispersed in uneasy silence. Claire remained behind for a moment, gazing at the shattered target in the distance. It was more than just a piece of metal, it was a symbol of every doubt she had overcome, every barrier she had broken. She slung her rifle over her shoulder and walked back toward the barracks, her steps steady and sure. Behind her, whispers began to rise among the men, no longer mocking but awed. The legend of the day: a woman cut the target clean before the general was already taking root, and Claire Donovan was ready to live up to it. The next morning dawned cold and gray, the early light filtering through low-hanging clouds as Claire stood on the edge of the training field, her breath misting in the frigid air. Despite her stunning performance the previous day, the atmosphere around her was tense and uncertain. The story of her perfect shot had spread like wildfire throughout the base overnight. Everywhere she walked, conversations would abruptly stop, and pairs of eyes would turn to follow her. Some looked at her with newfound respect, while others glared with resentment, unwilling to accept that a woman had just outperformed every man in the unit in front of the general himself. Claire kept her expression carefully neutral, focusing on the day's tasks, but inside she felt the weight of expectation pressing heavily on her shoulders. Today the unit was scheduled for advanced sniper drills in a simulated combat zone. It wasn't just about accuracy anymore, it was about survival, stealth, and endurance. The stakes were higher than ever, and Claire knew the others would be watching, waiting for any sign of weakness they could exploit to tear her down again. Sergeant Harris, whose pride had taken the biggest hit yesterday, was particularly hostile. As they geared up, he muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "One lucky shot doesn't make you a sniper, Donovan. Let's see how you do when it's not just about lying on the ground and pulling a trigger." Several of the men chuckled, though it was more forced than confident. Claire ignored him, methodically checking her rifle, adjusting her scope and strapping on her gear. She had learned long ago that responding to taunts was a waste of energy. The best revenge was performance. Captain Reeves, the unit commander, gathered them together for a briefing. Today's exercise will simulate a high-risk extraction mission. You'll be split into pairs and sent into the forested zone 2 miles east of here. Your objective is to infiltrate, neutralize enemy targets, and secure the extraction point without being detected. This is a test of coordination, precision, and tactical thinking. Fail and you'll be sent back to basic training for remedial drills. His gaze swept over the group, lingering briefly on Claire. Any questions? Harris raised his hand with a smirk. Sir, what about the rookie? Shouldn't we give her a handicap? Wouldn't want her getting lost out there. Reeves's expression hardened. Private Donovan will be treated like every other soldier here. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can take it up with General Rourke. That shut Harris up, though his glare at Claire promised that this wasn't over. The soldiers split into pairs, and to Claire's mild surprise, Reeves assigned her to work with Martinez. While Martinez had joined in the mocking laughter yesterday, he wasn't as aggressively antagonistic as Harris. Still, Claire knew he didn't trust her skills yet. As they set off toward the forest, he kept his tone clipped and professional, clearly reluctant to form any sort of camaraderie. "I'll take point," he said as they moved through the underbrush. "You just follow my lead and try not to make too much noise." Claire simply nodded, adjusting her pace to match his. The forest was dense and shadowy, the ground uneven and littered with fallen branches. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant caw of crows, the whisper of the wind through the trees. It was the perfect setting for an ambush, and Claire's senses were on high alert. As they approached their first checkpoint, Martinez raised a hand, signaling her to stop. Through a narrow gap between the trees, Claire spotted 2 enemy silhouettes, targets dressed in mock enemy uniforms, patrolling the area. Martinez crouched low, gesturing for her to stay back while he took the shot. Claire watched silently, noting his stance, his breathing, the slight tremor in his hands. His shot rang out, hitting one target squarely, but the second spun toward them in response, raising an alarm device. Without hesitation, Claire dropped prone and fired, her bullet hitting the alarm before it could sound, then immediately striking the second target cleanly through the chest. The forest fell silent again. Martinez turned to stare at her, his mouth slightly open. "How the hell did you?" he began, then stopped himself, shaking his head. "Lucky shot," he muttered, though the doubt in his voice was obvious. They moved on, the tension between them growing thicker. As the exercise progressed, it became clear that Claire's instincts were sharper than Martinez's. Twice, she detected enemy targets before he did, preventing them from walking into ambushes. When they reached a rocky outcrop overlooking the extraction point, they discovered a final challenge: a heavily guarded enemy bunker with multiple sentries positioned around it. Martinez cursed under his breath. "There's no way we can take them all out before they raise the alarm. We'll fail the mission." Claire scanned the area through her scope, analyzing wind direction, distances, and firing angles. "We can do it," she said quietly. "If we synchronize our shots perfectly, we can take out the sentries in pairs before they react. You handle the left side. I'll handle the right." Martinez hesitated, clearly unsure, but the determination in her voice left little room for argument. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "On your count." Claire steadied her breathing, her mind going perfectly still. She could almost hear her father's voice again, guiding her hands. 3, 2, 1. Their rifles fired in unison, the sharp cracks echoing through the valley. 2 sentries dropped instantly, followed by 2 more before the others realized what was happening. Claire shifted positions with lightning speed, picking off the remaining targets with surgical precision. By the time Martinez had reloaded, the area was silent once more, every enemy target neutralized. Martinez stared at her, all written plainly on his face. "That wasn't luck," he said finally, his voice hushed. You're the real deal." Claire didn't respond, simply signaling for him to move forward. They secured the extraction point and fired a flare, marking their successful completion of the mission. When they returned to base, Captain Reeves was waiting. His sharp eyes took in their mud-streaked uniforms and the exhaustion etched into their features. "Report," he demanded. Martinez stepped forward, still visibly shaken. "Sir, we completed the mission without detection. Private Donovan, she was incredible. We wouldn't have made it without her." Reeves's gaze shifted to Claire, his expression unreadable. "Is that so?" he said slowly. "Good work, both of you." Dismissed. As they walked away, Harris and the others were waiting nearby. Harris's smirk faltered when he saw the confident set of Claire's shoulders and the begrudging respect in Martinez's eyes. "What happened out there?" he demanded. Martinez glanced at Claire, then back at Harris. "She happened," he said simply before heading to the barracks. Harris's fists clenched at his sides, rage and humiliation battling for dominance. Claire met his glare with cool indifference, then walked past him without a word. Later that night, alone in her bunk, Claire cleaned her rifle with meticulous care. The day's victory had been satisfying, but she knew it had only deepened the resentment of those who wanted to see her fail. Harris would not take this lying down, and she could already sense the storm brewing on the horizon. Still, she felt no fear. She had faced worse before and she would face worse again. As she assembled the final piece of her rifle, she whispered softly to herself, a promise and a vow: "I will not break. Not now, not ever." Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of laughter that had once mocked her. But now there was something else in the air, whispers of respect, of fear, of legend. Claire Donovan was no longer just a soldier proving herself. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with, and the world was beginning to take notice. Claire woke before dawn, her body conditioned by years of relentless training to rise at the slightest disturbance. The barracks were silent except for the steady rhythm of breathing from the other soldiers. She sat on the edge of her bunk, lacing her boots with precise, methodical movements. Her mind replayed the events of the previous day, the perfect coordination, the flawless kills, the look of grudging respect in Martinez's eyes, and the fury that had burned in Harris's face when they returned victorious. She knew Harris's pride had been dealt a crushing blow. Men like him didn't forgive humiliation easily, and she could almost feel the simmering hostility radiating from him even when he wasn't present. She had faced enemies before, but there was something more dangerous about fighting someone within your own ranks. She brushed the thought aside, focusing on the day ahead. Today wasn't about Harris or his resentment. Today, General Rourke himself was returning to oversee a live-fire evaluation, one that would determine which soldiers were qualified for a high-level assignment overseas. This was the kind of opportunity Claire had dreamed of since she first picked up a rifle, a chance to prove herself on a stage that truly mattered. By the time the first rays of sunlight filtered through the narrow barracks windows, Claire was already geared up and ready. As the rest of the unit stumbled sleepily into wakefulness, she noticed Martinez watching her with a thoughtful expression. He gave her a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had forged in the forest. Harris, on the other hand, glared openly at her, his hatred no longer veiled by false camaraderie. He muttered something under his breath to the man beside him, and they both laughed, but the sound was brittle, edged with something dark. Captain Reeves called the unit to attention as they assembled on the training field. His voice was sharp and clipped, carrying easily over the crisp morning air. Listen up. Today's evaluation will simulate real combat conditions. You'll be divided into 2 squads, each tasked with a different objective. Squad Alpha will secure a high-value target and extract it safely. Squad Bravo will act as opposition forces, tasked with preventing the extraction by any means necessary. This exercise will test not only your marksmanship but also your ability to think tactically under pressure. His eyes scanned the group, lingering momentarily on Claire before moving on. General Rourke will be observing, and your performance today will determine your future assignments. Consider this your final exam. The tension in the air was palpable as names were called and squads were assigned. Claire was placed in Squad Alpha, along with Martinez and 3 others. Harris, predictably, was placed in Squad Bravo, giving him the perfect opportunity to act on his simmering vendetta. Claire met his gaze briefly across the field, reading the unspoken promise in his eyes. This was his chance to bring her down. As the exercise began, Squad Alpha moved swiftly through the rugged terrain, using hand signals and silent coordination to avoid detection. Martinez took point, while Claire provided overwatch from elevated positions whenever possible. Their target was a dummy representing a captured officer, hidden deep within a simulated enemy encampment. It was a challenging mission even under normal circumstances, but with Harris leading the opposition, Claire knew they couldn't afford a single mistake. As they approached a narrow ravine, Claire's instinct screamed a warning. She scanned the area through her scope, spotting the faint glint of a rifle barrel concealed among the rocks. "Ambush," she hissed, dropping to the ground and signaling the others to take cover. A split second later, gunfire erupted from all sides. Squad Bravo had set up a perfect kill zone, and bullets tore through the air as Alpha scrambled for cover. Martinez shouted orders, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Claire's world narrowed to the rhythm of her breathing and the smooth pull of her rifle's trigger. One shot, one kill. Over and over she dropped enemy shooters with surgical precision, creating gaps in the ambush for her team to exploit. Harris's voice rang out from somewhere in the distance, barking commands to his squad. "Focus on Donovan. Take her out first." Claire's lips tightened. So that was his plan. This wasn't just an exercise to him, it was personal. She shifted positions constantly, never staying in one place long enough for them to get a fix on her location. Her shots were devastatingly accurate, each one a silent rebuke to Harris's hatred. Despite her efforts, Alpha was taking heavy fire. One of their team members, a young private named Collins, went down with a simulated hit to the leg, crying out in pain as his sensor registered the strike. Martinez dragged him behind cover, gritting his teeth. "We can't hold this position forever," he said, his voice grim. Claire scanned the battlefield, her mind racing. Then she spotted it, a narrow ledge overlooking the enemy flank, difficult to reach but offering a perfect vantage point. "Cover me," she said. "I can take them out from there." Martinez's eyes widened. "It's suicide. You'll be exposed the whole way." "Trust me," she replied, already moving. She sprinted low and fast, weaving through the underbrush as bullets kicked up dirt around her. Adrenaline surged through her veins, sharpening her focus to a razor's edge. She reached the ledge, threw herself flat, and brought her rifle to bear. From this angle, the enemy positions were laid out like pieces on a chessboard. She exhaled slowly, then began firing with mechanical precision. Harris's squad faltered as their numbers dwindled, confusion spreading through their ranks. Harris himself appeared, his face contorted with rage as he spotted her position. He raised his rifle and fired, the bullet grazing the rock inches from her head. Claire didn't flinch. She lined up her shot and squeezed the trigger. The round struck Harris's sensor dead center, and a loud beep signaled his elimination from the exercise. For a moment there was stunned silence. Then, without their leader, Squad Bravo collapsed. Martinez rallied the remaining members of Alpha, and together they pushed forward, securing the target and completing the extraction with seconds to spare. When the exercise ended, General Rourke descended from the observation tower, his expression unreadable. The soldiers gathered in tense silence, waiting for his judgment. He surveyed them slowly, then spoke. What I witnessed today was both chaos and brilliance. Squad Alpha faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious through skill, courage, and leadership. In particular, Private Donovan's performance was exceptional. His gaze fixed on Claire, and for the first time, his stern features softened slightly. You are a sniper of extraordinary talent, Private. You have proven beyond any doubt that you belong here. A ripple of murmurs passed through the group. Harris stood off to the side, his face pale and drawn. The humiliation of being personally taken out by Claire in front of the general was almost too much to bear. Claire met his gaze briefly, then looked away, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of seeing her triumph. That night, the mood in the barracks was electric. Martinez approached her quietly, a rare smile on his face. You saved all our asses out there, he said simply. I was wrong about you. Claire gave a small nod, her own expression calm but resolute. We all did our part, she replied, though they both knew the truth. As the others drifted off to sleep, Claire sat alone, cleaning her rifle by lamplight. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, but also a flicker of unease. Harris's hatred hadn't been extinguished, it had been fanned into a raging fire. And now, with his pride shattered twice over, she knew he would stop at nothing to take her down, no matter the cost. Outside, the wind howled through the darkness, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. Claire tightened her grip on her rifle, her resolve hardening. She had faced open enemies before. Facing one hidden among her own ranks would be a new challenge entirely, but she was ready. The following days passed under a cloud of uneasy tension. Though Squad Alpha's victory had earned the entire unit commendations, Claire could feel the atmosphere shifting every time she entered a room. Whispers followed her like a shadow, their tone uncertain, a mix of admiration and resentment. Some of the soldiers now treated her with open respect, seeking her advice on marksmanship or tactics, while others, led by Harris's remaining allies, seethed in silent hostility. Harris himself kept his distance, but Claire could feel his presence like a thorn in her side. She had humiliated him twice, both times in front of General Rourke, and a man like Harris didn't forgive such wounds easily. He was quieter now, his taunts replaced by something far more dangerous: planning. Claire knew it was only a matter of time before he struck, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. Captain Reeves, seemingly unaware of the undercurrents, pushed the unit harder than ever. With the general's evaluation complete, the base had returned to its grueling schedule of drills, night operations and tactical simulations. Each day blurred into the next, leaving little time for rest. Claire thrived under the pressure. The harder the training became, the sharper her focus grew. She spent every free moment refining her skills, pushing herself to the very limits of endurance. Martinez often joined her, their partnership strengthening as he came to fully respect her abilities. One evening, as they cleaned their rifles in the armory, he broke the comfortable silence. You know Harris isn't done, right? He said quietly, glancing toward the door to make sure no one was listening. The way he looked at you after the last exercise. I've seen that look before. It's dangerous. Claire nodded, her expression calm. I know. He's smart enough to wait for the right moment. That makes him even more dangerous. She paused, considering her words carefully. But I won't let him control my actions. If he comes for me, I'll be ready. Martinez frowned, clearly unsatisfied with her answer, but he didn't press further. 2 nights later, the unit was deployed for a nighttime navigation drill in the dense forest surrounding the base. It was supposed to be a straightforward exercise. Teams would navigate to designated checkpoints using only maps and compasses, testing their ability to move silently and coordinate in darkness. Claire was paired with Martinez again, while Harris was assigned to a separate team. At first, the mission went smoothly. The forest was quiet except for the soft crunch of leaves beneath their boots and the distant hoot of an owl. Claire moved with practiced ease, her senses attuned to every sound and shadow. The moonlight filtering through the branches cast eerie patterns on the ground, making it difficult to distinguish friend from foe. As they neared the 3rd checkpoint, Claire felt a prickle of unease. The forest seemed too quiet, the usual background noises of wildlife unnaturally absent. She held up a hand, signaling Martinez to stop. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Before he could respond, a sudden rustle erupted from the underbrush, followed by a sharp cry. Claire spun, rifle at the ready, but saw nothing. When she turned back, Martinez was gone. Her heart pounded as she scanned the area, her mind racing. This wasn't part of the exercise. Someone had taken him. Moving silently, Claire followed the faint trail of disturbed leaves and broken branches. The path led her deeper into the forest, far from the designated drill area. Then she saw it, a faint light flickering through the trees. She crouched low, creeping closer until she could make out the scene. Martinez was on his knees, hands bound, with Harris and two of his closest allies standing over him. Their faces were illuminated by the glow of a small lantern, twisted with malice. "This is your chance, Harris," one of the men said, his voice low and urgent. "Make it look like an accident. No one will ever know." Harris's expression was cold, his eyes glinting with hatred. "Oh, they'll know," he snarled. "They'll know she's not untouchable. Donovan humiliated me twice, made me look like a fool in front of the general. Tonight I take back my reputation." He raised a knife, its blade catching the lantern light. "When they find Martinez dead, everyone will blame her. She'll go down in flames and I'll be the hero who exposed her." Claire's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a grudge anymore. Harris was willing to commit murder to destroy her. She steadied her breathing, forcing down the surge of rage and fear. She needed to act fast but carefully. Any mistake could cost Martinez his life. Sliding silently into position, Claire took aim through her scope. Harris was standing just to the left of Martinez, his stance tense and focused. Claire exhaled slowly, calculating angles and timing. One precise shot could disarm him without killing him. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle's suppressed crack was almost inaudible, but Harris screamed as the bullet shattered the knife hilt, sending shards flying. Martinez dove to the ground, rolling away as Claire charged into the clearing, her rifle now aimed squarely at Harris. "Drop your weapons," she barked, her voice sharp and commanding. For a split second, the men hesitated, stunned by her sudden appearance. Then one of Harris's allies lunged at her, but Claire moved like lightning. She pivoted, striking him with the butt of her rifle before firing a shot into his chest plate. The sensor registered a direct hit, beeping loudly to simulate a kill. The second man raised his rifle, but Claire dropped to one knee and fired again, taking him out cleanly. Harris stood frozen, his face pale with shock and fury. "You ruined everything," he spat, his voice trembling. "You think you're better than me, Donovan? You think you belong here?" "I don't think," Claire replied coldly, her sights locked on him. "I prove it. Every single day." Harris lunged, but Claire was ready. She sidestepped his attack and struck him with a precise blow to the jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. Before he could recover, she had him pinned, her knee pressing into his chest as she secured his wrists with a zip tie from her gear. Martinez staggered to his feet, his face pale but determined. "I heard everything," he said hoarsely. "We have witnesses now. He's finished." By the time they returned to base, dragging Harris along like a captured criminal, the entire camp was in an uproar. Captain Reeves met them at the gate, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. "What the hell happened out there?" he demanded. Claire's voice was calm but edged with steel as she recounted the events, Martinez backing her up with every detail. Harris tried to protest, his words wild and incoherent, but no one listened. His own allies, defeated and humiliated, refused to speak in his defense. General Rourke was summoned immediately. When he arrived, his expression was thunderous. He listened to Claire's report in silence, then turned his icy gaze on Harris. "You have disgraced this unit and dishonored the uniform you wear," he said, his voice like a blade. "You are hereby stripped of your rank and will face a full military tribunal." Harris's face crumpled, rage and despair warring within him. As the MPs dragged him away, Claire felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by exhaustion. She had won the battle but at a cost. The unit's trust had been shattered, and the path ahead was uncertain. That night, as Claire sat alone in the armory, she let herself finally breathe. The events of the evening replayed in her mind, each moment etched into her memory. Martinez entered quietly, his expression solemn. "You saved my life," he said simply. Claire looked up, her eyes steady. "We save each other," she replied. "That's what this job is supposed to be about." Outside, the wind carried away the last echoes of Harris's schemes. For now the danger had passed. But Claire knew the world beyond the base was filled with even greater threats. She would need every ounce of her skill and determination for the battles to come. The base was silent the following morning, the usual chatter and laughter replaced by a tense, heavy stillness. The events of the night before had spread like wildfire. Every soldier now knew the truth. Harris, once one of the most respected men in the unit, had been exposed as a traitor willing to kill his own comrade just to destroy Claire. For many it was unthinkable. For Claire, it was a bitter reminder that danger could come not only from enemies on the battlefield but also from those you trained beside every day. As she walked across the parade ground toward the mess hall, she could feel the stares following her. Some were filled with admiration, others with fear or uncertainty. Martinez walked at her side, his expression grim but protective, scanning the crowd as though daring anyone to speak against her. They both knew Harris's removal hadn't solved everything. His allies were still in the unit, and though they hadn't been directly involved in his plot, their loyalty to him left them bitter and resentful. Claire could feel their hostility like a physical force pressing in on her. Inside the mess hall, the atmosphere was equally strained. Conversations halted as Claire entered, only to resume in hushed tones moments later. She ignored the whispers, focusing on her tray of food, but Martinez muttered darkly under his breath. "They should be thanking you," he said. "If you hadn't acted, Harris would have killed me, and maybe others too. Instead they act like you're the villain." Claire shook her head. "Fear makes people irrational. They're not sure who to trust anymore. Harris was one of their leaders and I tore that illusion apart. It'll take time for them to accept it." Before Martinez could reply, Captain Reeves entered, his face set in a grim expression. The entire hall snapped to attention. "At ease," Reeves said, though his tone carried no warmth. "General Rourke has called a mandatory assembly. Finish your meals quickly and report to the main briefing hall in 15 minutes. The announcement sent a ripple of unease through the room. Claire and Martinez exchanged a glance. Whatever this was about, it wasn't routine. 15 minutes later, the entire unit was assembled in the cavernous hall. General Rourke stood at the front, flanked by two high-ranking officers. His presence commanded absolute silence. When he spoke, his voice was cold and precise. "Last night's events have exposed a serious weakness within this unit. Trust has been shattered and discipline has been compromised. Such failures are unacceptable, especially now." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Our intelligence has confirmed that a hostile faction known as the Crimson Viper is operating within this region. They are highly trained, well-funded, and responsible for several recent attacks on Allied forces. Until now, their base of operations has been hidden, but we have intercepted communications indicating a planned strike against our supply lines. We cannot allow this to happen." A murmur ran through the soldiers, quickly silenced by Rourke's raised hand. "We will be deploying a specialized task force to locate and eliminate the Crimson Viper's leadership before they can act. This mission will be dangerous, requiring absolute precision and trust between every member of the team." His sharp gaze swept over the assembled soldiers before landing on Claire. Private Donovan stepped forward. Claire obeyed, her posture rigid but her heart pounding. "You have demonstrated exceptional skill and courage, both on the range and in the field," Rourke said. "Despite internal sabotage, you have upheld the values of this unit and proven yourself under fire. For this mission, you will serve as lead sniper and overwatch specialist." The room erupted into whispers. Some soldiers looked shocked, others openly resentful. Claire could feel their judgment like a physical weight, but she kept her face expressionless. "Alongside you," Rourke continued, "Sergeant Martinez will act as your spotter and secondary marksman. The rest of the team will consist of 4 carefully selected operatives." His voice hardened. "There will be no room for dissent or division. If any member of this team fails to perform, they will not be coming back." After the briefing, Claire and Martinez were given files on their mission. The Crimson Viper's base was located deep within a network of canyons known for their treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather. Satellite imagery showed heavily fortified positions and multiple patrol routes. The only way to approach undetected would be under the cover of darkness, moving silently through narrow ravines and scaling sheer cliff faces. As they studied the maps, Martinez whistled low. "This is going to be a nightmare. They've got sniper nests, tripwires, the works. One wrong move and we're toast." Claire's eyes narrowed as she traced a potential route with her finger. "We'll use the terrain to our advantage. Their defenses are strong but they're predictable. If we move here," she pointed to a shadowed ravine, "we can bypass their outer patrols and get close enough for me to take out their sentries without alerting the main camp." Martinez gave her a wry smile. "You make it sound easy." It won't be, she admitted. But it's possible. Preparation for the mission consumed the next 48 hours. Claire meticulously calibrated her rifle, ensuring every component was flawless. She memorized the layout of the enemy camp, the timing of their patrols, and the positions of every known sniper nest. Martinez worked alongside her, their partnership now seamless, built on mutual trust forged through fire. The night of the mission arrived cold and moonless, the sky a vast expanse of darkness. The team moved out silently, their black gear blending into the shadows. Claire led the way, her every sense heightened. The canyon loomed ahead, its jagged walls rising like dark sentinels against the night sky. As they descended into the ravine, the silence was oppressive. Every crunch of gravel underfoot sounded deafening. Claire's breathing slowed, her heartbeat steady. Through her scope, she scanned the path ahead, spotting the faint outline of a sentry on a distant ridge. She signaled to Martinez, who crouched beside her, holding a rangefinder. 300 yards, he whispered. Wind from the west, slight cross breeze. Claire adjusted her scope, exhaled and fired. The suppressed shot was little more than a whisper, and the sentry crumpled silently. The team moved forward, ghosts in the darkness. For the next hour, they advanced steadily, neutralizing guards with silent precision. Every shot Claire took was perfect, each target falling without a sound. But as they neared the heart of the enemy camp, Martinez suddenly raised a hand, signaling a halt. Tripwires, he murmured, pointing to a nearly invisible thread stretched across the path. Claire's stomach tightened. One misstep here would trigger an alarm and bring the entire camp down on their heads. Working carefully, they disarmed the trap, but the delay cost them precious time. Ahead, the faint glow of campfires signaled they were close. Claire climbed to a vantage point overlooking the enemy stronghold, her breath catching as she saw the scale of the operation. Dozens of tents and supply caches were spread across the canyon floor, guarded by heavily armed soldiers. At the center stood a large command tent, its entrance flanked by 2 elite guards. "That's our target," Martinez said grimly. "Take out the guards and we move in." Claire steadied her rifle, her focus narrowing to a razor's edge. She could feel the weight of the entire mission on her shoulders. One mistake here would doom them all. Slowly, carefully, she exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The first guard dropped silently. The second had only a split second to react before Claire's follow-up shot took him down. "Move," she hissed, and the team surged forward. But just as they reached the edge of the camp, a flare shot into the sky, bathing the canyon in harsh white light. Shouts erupted as enemy soldiers scrambled to respond. Claire's blood ran cold. They had been discovered. "Contact! Contact!" Martinez shouted, diving for cover as bullets began to rain down. Claire pivoted, scanning for enemy snipers. Through the chaos, she spotted a glint of metal high on the canyon wall, a sniper nest aiming directly at her team. Without hesitation, she fired. The enemy sniper toppled, but more gunfire erupted from every direction. The Crimson Viper was coming at them with full force, and the mission was spiraling out of control. Claire's mind went perfectly still. There was no room for fear now, only action. Martinez, flank left. "I'll cover you," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. As Martinez moved, Claire reloaded with lightning speed, her rifle a seamless extension of her will. She had faced doubt, betrayal, and hatred, but this was what she was born for. Tonight, she would prove not just to her unit but to herself that she was more than a soldier. She was a warrior. Bullets tore through the night as chaos erupted in the canyon, the once silent darkness now filled with deafening gunfire and shouted orders. Claire pressed herself against a jagged rock, her rifle steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She could hear the panicked shouts of Crimson Viper soldiers as they scrambled to respond to the sudden intrusion, their voices echoing off the canyon walls like a storm of rage. Martinez was a blur of motion on the left flank, his silhouette barely visible in the harsh light of the flare that still illuminated the camp. Claire's mind operated on pure instinct, every movement precise, every breath measured. She scanned through her scope, searching for priority targets, and found 2 machine gunners setting up a heavy weapon that would cut her team to pieces if they opened fire. She didn't hesitate. The first shot dropped the loader, the second took out the gunner mid-motion, his body collapsing over the weapon. "Clear on the MG," she shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. Martinez responded immediately, signaling 2 team members to advance on the cleared position. They surged forward, hurling grenades toward a cluster of enemy fighters who had taken cover behind supply crates. The explosions lit up the night, sending debris and screams into the air. Claire pivoted, scanning for snipers, her mind hyper-focused on the elevated ridges above. A glint of light caught her eye, a sniper preparing to fire on Martinez. She shifted, exhaled, and fired. The enemy sniper slumped over the edge, tumbling into the darkness below. "Sniper down," she yelled, her voice carrying over the cacophony. But the Crimson Viper was not disorganized. They were disciplined, highly trained, and they adapted quickly. Within moments, return fire intensified, pinning Claire's team down behind a line of low rocks. Martinez crawled to her position, his face smeared with dirt and sweat, eyes blazing with determination. "We're outnumbered 2-1, he growled. "We need to move or they'll box us in." Claire's mind raced. Retreat was not an option. If they failed here, the Crimson Viper would launch their attack on the supply lines and countless Allied soldiers would die. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, visualizing the camp layout she had memorized. Then her eyes snapped open, icy with resolve. "We split them up," she said. "Martinez, take Jenkins and Cole and circle around to the north. Draw their fire, make it look like a full retreat. I'll hold position here with Davis and Reed, provide overwatch and thin their numbers." Martinez's jaw tightened. "That's suicide." "It's the only way," Claire replied, her tone brooking no argument. "You know I can handle this. Trust me." For a heartbeat, he hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. "Don't you dare get killed," he muttered, then signaled his team and slipped into the shadows. Claire turned her attention back to the battlefield, her rifle snapping from target to target with deadly precision. Every shot was calculated, every kill deliberate. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting to prove that she belonged here, that the sneers and laughter about women not being able to snipe had been nothing but ignorance and fear. Enemy soldiers fell one by one under her unerring aim, their confusion growing as they realized they were facing a sniper of terrifying skill. Davis and Reed fired controlled bursts beside her, holding the line as the enemy focused more and more of their attention on Claire's position. Suddenly, a voice roared over the din, commanding and furious. Claire's blood went cold as she spotted a figure emerging from the command tent, a towering man with a crimson serpent emblazoned on his chest. This was no ordinary soldier. This was the leader of the Crimson Viper himself. He barked orders in a language Claire didn't understand, and the enemy forces immediately shifted their tactics, coordinating with frightening precision. Heavy gunfire erupted, forcing Claire to duck low as bullets chewed the rock inches from her head. "We've got a problem," Davis shouted, his voice tight with fear. "They're regrouping fast." Claire gritted her teeth, adjusting her scope to focus on the leader. If she could take him out, it might disrupt their chain of command and give her team the edge they needed. She steadied her breathing, lined up the shot, and squeezed the trigger. At the last second, the leader moved, and the bullet grazed his shoulder instead of striking his heart. He roared in rage, pointing directly at Claire's position. "Move!" she shouted, diving to the side just as a rocket-propelled grenade slammed into the rock where she had been crouching. The explosion sent her tumbling, her ears ringing, vision swimming. She struggled to her feet, clutching her rifle, and saw Davis lying motionless nearby, blood pooling beneath him. A surge of fury and grief burned through her, sharpening her focus to a razor's edge. She wouldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. Through the haze of smoke and dust, she spotted Martinez's team making their move. They fired from the north, their attack drawing a significant portion of the enemy forces away, just as planned. Claire seized the opportunity, signaling Reed to follow her as they advanced toward the command tent. Moving from cover to cover, she eliminated enemies with silent efficiency, her mind locked in a deadly rhythm. Each pull of the trigger was a promise kept to herself and to every doubter who had ever tried to break her. As they neared the tent, Reed was struck by a burst of gunfire and went down with a cry. Claire dragged him behind cover, checking his wound quickly. "Stay here and keep pressure on it," she ordered. "I'll finish this." His face was pale, but he nodded, gripping her hand briefly before she slipped away into the shadows. The final stretch was the most dangerous. The Crimson Viper leader had retreated into the tent, guarded by his elite soldiers. Claire knew she couldn't take them all head-on, so she climbed to a rocky outcrop overlooking the tent and positioned herself carefully. Through her scope, she could see the leader pacing inside, barking orders into a radio. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. This was the moment she had been training for, the moment to end this nightmare once and for all. She squeezed the trigger. The shot pierced the night, and the leader staggered, then fell, his lifeblood staining the dirt. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then chaos erupted as his men shouted in confusion, their cohesion shattering without his command. Martinez's voice came through her earpiece, urgent but exultant. Claire, we've got them on the run. Push forward. Claire descended from her perch, joining Martinez as their combined forces surged into the camp. Without leadership, the Crimson Viper crumbled, scattering into the darkness. When the last shot was fired, the canyon was eerily silent once more, broken only by the ragged breathing of the surviving team members. Martinez turned to Claire, his face a mixture of exhaustion and awe. You did it, he said simply. You saved all of us. Claire shook her head, her expression somber. We did it, she corrected. But deep inside she knew the truth, her shot had ended the battle. As dawn broke over the canyon, painting the sky with shades of gold and crimson, Claire stood atop a ridge, her rifle slung over her shoulder. She had faced doubt, betrayal, and overwhelming odds, and she had emerged victorious. Somewhere, she imagined Harris watching from his cell, seething with rage and humiliation. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Women couldn't snipe? Let them laugh. She had just proved them all wrong, and the world would never forget it. The victory in the canyon was hard-earned, but Claire knew it wasn't the end. As the sun climbed higher, painting the battlefield in a stark light, the smell of gunpowder and blood lingered heavily in the air. Her team moved silently through the wreckage of the Crimson Viper camp, gathering intel and searching for survivors who might provide information. Martinez kept close to Claire, his face lined with exhaustion but his posture alert, always ready for another attack. The loss of Davis and the near-fatal wound Reed had sustained weighed heavily on everyone, a reminder of the price they had paid. Claire's body ached, her uniform torn and stained, but her mind was sharp, focused on what needed to be done. They discovered maps, encrypted communications, and weapons caches that hinted at a far larger network than they had anticipated. Claire crouched over a map spread out on a makeshift table inside the command tent, her brow furrowed as she traced the lines with her finger. This wasn't their only base, she murmured, her voice grim. Look here, supply routes, safe houses, contact points. The Crimson Viper is bigger than we thought. Martinez leaned over her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. If this is accurate, then taking out this camp was just the first step. There are more cells, maybe even more leaders. We've cut off one head of the snake, but the body's still thrashing. Claire nodded, her jaw tightening. We need to get this intel back to command immediately. If we move fast, we can strike before they regroup. She carefully folded the map and tucked it into her pack. As they prepared to move out, Reed groaned from where he lay on a stretcher, pale but conscious. Claire knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Hang in there, she said softly. We're getting you home. His lips trembled into a faint smile. You really showed them, Claire, he whispered. All those guys who said you didn't belong, they don't matter anymore. Emotion tightened Claire's throat, but she forced a smile. Rest now. You've earned it. The journey back to base was grueling. They moved cautiously, wary of ambushes, their senses on high alert. Martinez led the way while Claire took the rear, her rifle ready. Several times they heard distant movement, but no enemy appeared. When they finally emerged from the canyon into the open desert, the sight of an extraction helicopter waiting for them felt like a miracle. The rotors churned the air as they loaded Reed and the fallen soldier's body aboard, then climbed in themselves. As the helicopter lifted off, Claire stared down at the battlefield shrinking below, a swirl of emotions in her chest. Relief, grief, determination, they all warred within her. She knew the fight wasn't over. Back at the base, their return sparked a wave of whispers. Soldiers who had once sneered at Claire now stared in open awe, their expressions a mix of respect and disbelief. The story of the mission had spread faster than wildfire. Everyone knew how she had taken the shot that ended the Crimson Viper leader, how her skill and leadership had turned the tide of battle. Captain Reeves was waiting on the landing pad, his usually stern face softened with pride. Outstanding work, he said, his voice carrying over the roar of the helicopter blades. You've done this unit proud, Donovan. Claire nodded, too tired to speak, but his words filled her with a quiet warmth. Later, in the debriefing room, General Rourke himself addressed the team. His piercing gaze swept over them, lingering on Claire. This mission was a success because of teamwork, courage, and skill, he said. Private Donovan, your actions were exemplary. You not only eliminated a key enemy leader but also inspired those around you to rise above their fears and doubts. You've proven beyond question that skill has no gender. His voice hardened. But make no mistake, the war against the Crimson Viper is far from over. Intelligence gathered from this mission suggests a much larger threat. We will strike again, and when we do, we will need warriors like you leading the way. Claire stood at attention, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. Sir, I'm ready. After the debriefing, Claire returned to her quarters. The room felt strangely small and quiet after the chaos of battle. She sat on her bunk, staring at her rifle propped in the corner. It had been her lifeline, her voice, her proof that she belonged. Memories of Harris surged unexpectedly, his smug smirk, his lies, his attempt to destroy her. He was rotting in a military prison now, but his words still echoed in her mind. Women can't snipe. She clenched her fists, the anger a cold, steady flame. Harris had been wrong, and she had shown him and everyone else exactly what a woman could do. Martinez appeared in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. You did good out there, he said quietly. Claire looked up, a small smile tugging at her lips. We all did. He shook his head. No, Claire. You led us. You saved us. Don't downplay that. He stepped inside, his expression turning serious. You know they're going to call on you again. Rourke's not the kind of guy who lets talent like yours sit idle. Are you ready for that? Claire considered his words, then nodded firmly. I didn't fight this hard just to fade into the background. If there's another mission, I'll be there. Martinez grinned. That's what I like to hear. The following day, Claire found herself summoned to Rourke's office. The general was seated behind a massive desk, stacks of reports and maps spread before him. He gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. Donovan, he began, I've been reviewing the intel you recovered. It confirms what we feared. The Crimson Viper is part of a global network. Their resources are vast, their operations far-reaching. Taking out their leader here was a blow, but others will rise to take his place. Claire's stomach tightened, but she met his gaze steadily. Then we take them down one by one. Rourke's lips twitched into a brief, approving smile. That's the spirit. Which is why I'm promoting you to corporal, effective immediately. You'll be given command training and a more active role in planning future operations. Claire's eyes widened in shock, then filled with determination. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Word of her promotion spread quickly, and this time the whispers were different. There was no mockery, no doubt, only respect. Even those who had once laughed at her fell silent when she passed, their gazes filled with something close to awe. Claire accepted it with quiet dignity, but inside she felt a fierce pride. Not for herself alone, but for every woman who had ever been told she couldn't fight, couldn't lead, couldn't win. That night, as she lay awake, Claire replayed the battle in her mind. She saw the faces of her fallen comrades, heard the echo of Harris's laughter, felt the steady weight of her rifle in her hands. She understood now that this was her path. She hadn't just proven herself once, she would keep proving it over and over, until there was no one left to doubt. The road ahead would be dangerous, filled with loss and sacrifice, but she was ready. Outside, the wind howled across the desert, carrying with it the distant sounds of training drills and the hum of machinery. Somewhere out there, the Crimson Viper was regrouping, plotting their next move. Claire closed her eyes, her mind already sharpening into focus. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on, her aim steady, her resolve unbreakable. She had been laughed at, underestimated, betrayed, but she had risen above it all. And when the next shot came, she would be ready to take it, no hesitation, no fear. The world would remember her name, not as a woman who was doubted, but as a warrior who silenced every voice that ever told her she couldn't. The weeks that followed were a blur of relentless training, intelligence briefings, and preparation for what everyone knew would be the most critical mission yet. Claire threw herself into the work with a focus that bordered on obsession. Her promotion to corporal came with new responsibilities, and she took them seriously, spending long hours in the planning room alongside Martinez and Captain Reeves, studying maps, enemy profiles and intercepted communications. The Crimson Viper had gone silent since the canyon battle, but their silence was not a sign of defeat, it was the calm before a devastating storm. Reports came in of attacks across the region, seemingly random but devastatingly effective, disrupting supply lines and sowing chaos among Allied forces. General Rourke stood before the assembled officers one evening, his face grim as he pointed to a cluster of red marks on the digital map. These aren't isolated strikes, he said. They're calculated distractions. While we scramble to contain the chaos, they're preparing for something bigger. Our analysts believe they're planning a coordinated assault on a major city within the next 2 weeks. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone like a shroud. Claire's heart pounded as she studied the map, her mind racing. This wasn't just another mission. It was a race against time to stop a catastrophe. Later that night, Martinez found Claire alone in the armory, methodically cleaning her rifle. "You haven't slept in 3 days," he said, his tone half concerned, half reproachful. Claire didn't look up. "Sleep won't stop them, Martinez. Preparation might." He sighed, leaning against the wall. "You can't save the world by yourself, you know. You've got a team now. Trust us." Claire paused, her hands stilling on the rifle. She thought of Davis and the others who had fallen, of Reed still recovering in the infirmary. Trust was a fragile thing, hard-earned and easily shattered, but she knew Martinez was right. She met his gaze, her eyes weary but determined. "I do trust you. That's why we can't afford to fail." Martinez gave a short nod, understanding more in her silence than in her words. The next morning the final briefing took place. General Rourke's voice was hard as steel as he outlined the plan. The Crimson Viper had been traced to a fortified compound hidden in the ruins of an abandoned industrial complex near the city's outskirts. Satellite imagery showed layers of defenses, sniper towers, minefields, and heavy weapon emplacements. "This is their command center," Rourke said. "Take it out and you cut the head off the snake for good. Fail and they'll unleash chaos on a scale we've never seen." Claire's team would infiltrate under cover of darkness, neutralize the outer defenses, and then strike directly at the leadership core. It was a mission fraught with risk, but there was no alternative. When Rourke's gaze met Claire's, it was filled with both challenge and faith. "Corporal Donovan, you'll have full operational command of this mission. I chose you because you've proven yourself time and again. Lead well and bring your people home." Claire saluted sharply, her voice unwavering. "Yes, sir." As night fell, the team moved out, their black gear blending seamlessly with the shadows. The city loomed in the distance, its lights twinkling like fragile stars, oblivious to the danger that crept ever closer. Claire's heart was steady as they approached the ruins of the industrial complex, but her mind was razor-sharp, every detail etched into her memory. Through her scope, she scanned the perimeter, noting guard positions and patrol patterns. The enemy was disciplined but predictable. She signaled silently, and the team split into 2 groups, Martinez taking one to disable the minefield while Claire led the other toward the sniper towers. Moving like wraiths, they crept through the darkness, eliminating sentries with silent precision. Each shot Claire took was perfect, her rifle an extension of her will. The memory of Harris's mocking voice seemed to echo faintly in her mind, "Women can't snipe," and she silenced it with every flawless kill. As they breached the outer perimeter, a sudden explosion rocked the night. Martinez's voice came through her earpiece, tense but controlled. "Minefields down, but they know we're here. Get ready for heavy resistance." Claire gritted her teeth and pushed forward. Enemy soldiers poured out of the compound, their shouts mingling with the staccato bark of gunfire. The night erupted into chaos. Claire directed her team with calm authority, positioning them to create overlapping fields of fire. Martinez rejoined her, his expression grim but resolute. "We've got one shot at this," he said over the roar of battle. "We take out their leaders or we die trying." Claire nodded, her focus absolute. "Then let's make it count." They fought their way through the compound, room by room, corridor by corridor. The enemy was relentless, but Claire's team moved with precision and unity, every action honed by trust and training. Finally they reached the central chamber, a cavernous space filled with monitors, maps and the core leadership of the Crimson Viper. At the far end stood a figure Claire recognized instantly from intelligence photos. The new leader, a cold-eyed tactician known only as Viper Prime. His voice cut through the din filled with venom. "Kill them all." The battle that followed was unlike anything Claire had experienced. Her rifle was too slow for the close quarters, so she drew her sidearm, moving with lethal grace through the chaos. Martinez covered her flank, his shotgun thundering as he cleared a path. One by one the enemy leaders fell until only Viper Prime remained. He fought like a demon, wielding a combat knife with terrifying skill. Claire engaged him in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle, her muscles screaming as she blocked and countered. His strength was overwhelming, but Claire had something he didn't, a cause worth fighting for. With a final desperate surge, she disarmed him and drove the knife into his chest. His eyes widened in shock before he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. For a moment there was silence. Then Martinez's voice, ragged with relief, "It's over." Claire stood over the fallen leader, her chest heaving, sweat and blood mingling on her skin. "No," she said softly. "It's just beginning." She turned to the others. "Plant the charges. We're bringing this whole place down." They raced against the clock, setting explosives throughout the compound as enemy reinforcements closed in. With seconds to spare, they sprinted for the extraction point, the night behind them erupting in a massive fireball as the compound was obliterated. The shockwave nearly knocked them off their feet, but they kept running until the rescue helicopter swooped in, lifting them into the sky as flames consumed the ruins below. As they flew back toward base, the first light of dawn painted the horizon in hues of gold and crimson. Claire sat in silence, her rifle across her knees, watching the city grow closer. She thought of everyone who had doubted her, everyone who had laughed when she said she wanted to be a sniper. She thought of Davis, Reed, and all the others who had sacrificed so much. And she thought of Harris, sitting in his cell, forced to hear the news that the woman he had tried to destroy had saved countless lives and ended a terrorist threat that might have consumed the world. When they landed, General Rourke was waiting. He saluted Claire personally, his eyes filled with respect. "You didn't just lead a mission tonight," he said. "You changed the course of this war. History will remember what you've done here." Claire returned the salute, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I didn't do it alone, sir. My team, my family made it possible." In the days that followed, Claire became a symbol. Not just of victory, but of defiance against prejudice and doubt. Soldiers who had once mocked her now looked to her for guidance, their laughter replaced by admiration. But Claire remained humble, focused on the battles yet to come. She knew there would always be another fight, another enemy, another voice saying she couldn't succeed. And she knew exactly how to answer those voices, with the crack of a rifle and the quiet certainty of a woman who had proven herself beyond all doubt. One evening, as the sun set over the base, Martinez joined her on the shooting range. He handed her a fresh target and grinned. "Think you can still hit a clean bullseye after all that?" Claire smirked, settling into position. "Watch and learn." She took a deep breath, aimed and fired. The bullet struck dead center, cutting the target clean in two. Martinez whistled low. "Perfect shot." Claire lowered her rifle, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Let them laugh," she said softly. "I'll keep proving them wrong one shot at a time." The end.